Welcome guys to Magic with Ken. Today we'll be taking a quick preview at a couple decks in Return to Ravnica. Return to Ravnica doesn't come out till October 5th, but some nice people have put up the cards on Cockatrice, so I've been playtesting a lot, trying a lot of different cards, seeing what kind of decks are out there, trying color combinations, and just the power of some cards that may or may not have been overrated when they're spoiled. So this particular deck tech is going to go over blue, white, green ramp. So BANT, like in the last format, they had Primeval Titan, Wolf Run Blue. Oh shit, that was loud. The last format had Wolf Run Blue, which had a bunch of Primeval Titans and rampant growth or whatever, and it ramped you into 10 mana or whatever on the board, so you could start hard casting, Temporal Mastery, and every card that you pull is basically value. You're just pulling threats all game. You're miracling cards like Bonfire. So you basically puts you into like a advantageous top deck situation. So this version of BANT, there's no more Primeval Titan. A lot of the cards that made the other deck good, primarily Primeval Titan, just don't exist anymore. So the Titans are gone. So we gotta look for new answers in the format. I don't want to explain too much about the format because it doesn't even exist yet. So we'll see how people play. But let me run you through this version of ramping, BANT ramp, if you will. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12, 25 lands in this deck. I play in 24 to 25 lands because it's important that I hit the land drops. Because sure, I might hit the ramping cards, but it's not always going to happen. So let's look at the creature package first, because of course everyone wants to know what the win conditions are, and the win conditions are fairly simple. You just beat to the face. You play creatures. So we got Drogskol Reaver, and basically this is a pretty versatile creature base, because I'm still testing different win conditions, seeing what I like, what I don't like. We got Drogskol Reaver, who's a 7-drop. One of 4 7-drops I have in the deck, and he's great. In an aggro-heavy environment, getting this guy out is a big, substantial change, because he's flying, double strike, lifelink. If he goes through free, he gets you 2 cards. If he fights a big guy, he gets you 2 cards. Whenever you gain life through other sources in the deck, he gets you 2 cards. So he's nice. The problem is he's 7 mana, but with the ramp, you'll be able to get that fairly quickly, and that's why there's only 1, because chances are it's going to take a couple turns, and you don't want to see this in multiples. A 7 mana creature in multiples is not good in an opening hand, and we're not really threat light. We have 12 threats here. But we'll go through the others. So Drogskol, I'm playing as a 1-of. I do like him. I think he's a good card. Also, the nice thing about him is he ducks Celestia Charm. And I think when you challenge BANT aggro or green-white aggro, you'll see a lot of people playing Celestia Charm. And that charm is a freaking big deal. Because it exiles creature with 5 power or greater. And Drogskol is 3/5. So he's a solid body and avoids a lot of removal. Although he's not hexproof, but he's multicolored, so that is nice, right? The next creature is Angel of Serenity, which is a new mythic from Return to Ravnica. And this card is the nuts, man. Basically what it does is when Angel of Serenity enters the battlefield, you may exile up to 3 other target creatures from the battlefield and or creatures from graveyards. And when he leaves the battlefield, you return those exiled cards to their owner's hand. So if there are threats on the table and you need an answer and you don't have a Wrath effect or a Terminus, you can, in desperation, play this character or play this card, and then when the card is finally answered, then by removal, then certainly those cards go back to your opponent's hand. Also, in retrospect, if you are dealing with, I don't know, some recurable threats, or your opponent is playing Unburial Rites, some kind of reanimator deck, and you don't like what you see in their opponent's graveyard, you can play this and remove those threats. But, and then that way, if the Angel of Serenity gets removed, those cards are in hand, and your opponent has to figure a way how to discard those. So, I mean, obviously this thing is a house versus Reanimator, but it is 7 mana to cast. But the one thing that is really awesome about it is that you can exile cards from your own graveyard. And as you take a look at the other creatures, you'll see why we want that, because basically we want more enter of the battlefield effects to take place. So moving on, we got Armada Wurm, which is another mythic from Return to Ravnica, and these mythics are crazy, man. For the most part, like the mythics that have been spoiled have been pretty powerful and worthy of the mythic rarity type. Armada Wurm is no different. 6 mana for 2 5/5 trampling worms. One is a token, so you can use things like populate with it, or whatever kind of, intangible virtue. I'm not playing that in this deck, but when it enters the battlefield, you get a token. So when you think about this, you attack with this guy. For whatever reason he dies, or you just want to exile him from play, then you drop Angel of Serenity. When she dies, you get that back in your hand, and it's just a powerful card. It's quality. We also have 4 Thragtusk, and Angel of Serenity, this is for sure. I'm not sure about Drogskol, he's cool. Angel of Serenity, I definitely want 2. I don't know if I want 3, but 2 is definitely necessary. Armada Wurm, he's seeming pretty strong right now. So I probably want 1 or 2. But Sigarda, Host of Herons, which I don't have in my list, is another option that, depending on how the meta shapes, how much spot removal there is, I may or may not play Sigarda over this. But like I said, with Serenity Angel, I mean, the recursion is just so insane, and when 4 Thragtusk giving you life and stabilizing the board, you're going to have time to do these kinds of interactions late game. One of the nicest creatures that have come out so far is Sphinx of the Chimes, and some people might think that this card is a little too cute, but I assure you that this card is the real deal. Even he's not necessarily the board presence, you don't necessarily put him in play and then think that you have this, but there's value. He has value, but the problem is that the value is a little specific. As you see, he's a new creature. He's a rare from Return to Ravnica, and he's flying 5/6 for 6 mana, and he has an ability: discard 2 non-land cards with the same name. You draw 4 cards, but they cannot be lands. So you always got to play the lands in your hand. But this is a secret late game weapon, because one thing that ramp suffers from is when you do have mana on the board and you've played your threats, you're pretty much in top deck mode. So if your opponent answers your drops, you're basically, you're just basically in a battle to see who has a better top deck, quality top deck. And usually the ramp will have good quality top decks, but there's a chance you might pull into the cards that help you ramp, or utility cards that are kind of dead in hand. So we're going to go take a look at the rest of the package, and I'll tell you why this Sphinx is just so good. So let's look at the ramping package. We have 11 cards for ramp. We have Farseek, the 2 mana drop, returns to the game, and this is such a crazy card. Search your library for a plains, island, or swamp, or mountain, put it into the battlefield, tap for 2 mana. That seems like a rampant growth, but it's just better because plains, island, swamp, or mountain, so that means you can search for Hallowed Fountain or Temple Garden, both of which are plains, islands, or plains or islands. So I mean, that is huge, because that gets you a dual land in play tapped, not untapped, but still, I mean, like this is a deck, your turn 1 play, if you have a dual in your hand, is a tap dual, and then your turn 2 play is a Farseek. Or if it's not Farseek, it's this other card right here, Mana Bloom. So Mana Bloom, what it is 1 mana and X, and then it enters the battle. It's an enchantment. Enters the battlefield with any number of X counters on it. During any turn, you can remove a counter, get X mana to get 1 mana of any color. But the problem is you can only use this once a turn. So you can only get this only gives you 1 extra mana a turn. You're only ramping up 1 mana. But remember, you can do this during your turn, during your opponent's turn. So it is pretty powerful. It's worth taking a look at. And what happens is when it runs out of counters on it, during your next upkeep, you return it to your hand. And I'll explain in a little bit why that's important. But before that, let's just look at the other cards for ramping. And the next one is Ranger's Path, which we're playing 3 of. I might want to drop down to 2, but just for the sake of playtesting, 3 seems pretty decent, because I do want to hit this when I have 4 mana. Like if I'm pretty stabilized, then I do want to see this, because it's going to help me get out my Terminuses, my Armada Wurms, Thragtusk. The problem with Ranger's Path is it's 4 mana, sorcery speed, puts 2 force into play tapped, so that means you can only get Forest or Temple Garden, not Hallowed Fountains. So remember that when casting Farseek. Look at your mana base, see what you have on the board, and if you're pretty stable, then get Hallowed Fountains with Farseeks, get Temple Gardens with Ranger's Path. Depending on what you need, but that's a typical way to play it. Now, one of the things I was saying earlier, the downfalls of ramp is that as the game progresses, top deck mode, if you start top decking cards like Farseek and Ranger's Path, they're dead cards in hand. Sure, you can cast them to thin your library out like 2 cards or whatnot, but the values, it's hard to see the value there, especially if you have other threats in hand and you want to keep the mana in hand, to be able to use Alchemist Refuge or something, or whatever kind of package, or to answer things with instants, then it sucks. Okay, this card just sucks. There's no value. But here's a great thing. Chances are in the beginning game you're going to play 1 or 2 Farseeks, maybe a Ranger's Path. But in the late game, when you have your Sphinx out and you pull 2 copies of Ranger's Paths or an extra Farseek, don't play those extra lands unless you really, really need the lands. Like once you get 8 or 9 mana, you're pretty much stable. I mean, you don't need that much more mana. So you can just hold these Farseeks, just hold them as threats, counter spells, whatever, and then, once you get doubles of the card, you just toss them up to the Sphinx, and it gets you 4 cards. That is awesome, and it's a big swing. That is a free Amass the Components, or a free freaking, divination, 2 divinations, 2 free divinations at instant speed. That is pretty awesome. Mana Bloom works very well with this, because early in the game, all it is helping you, ramp to your threats faster. So late in the game, it becomes a dead card, and then you're going to have these in your hand, because there's nowhere else for it to go. Okay, so easy fodder for Sphinx of the Chimes, getting you more and more card draw. Every time I play Sphinx of the Chimes, in my personal games, I've at least used the ability once before Sphinx was removed, and it is a house. It is a big change. It is a free draw 4, and that is huge. Now let's just look at the rest of the package, the utility package. We have Cyclonic Rift, which is a new card. Basically, it's 2 mana for a boomerang, but if you pay 7 mana, then you return all permanents and owner controls to his hand. Okay, so yep, that is pretty awesome, and this is part of the win condition, because late in the game, when you're sitting with Armada Wurm or 2 Armada Wurms and a token or whatever, you basically just stabilize the board. End of turn, your opponent's turn, you overload a Cyclonic Rift, and you deal lethal the next turn. It's a big play. It also acts as a pseudo Terminus. It also acts as a yeah, I guess basically that's all it really acts as. But the one thing that sucks against is like other mid-range decks that rely on things like Thragtusk or cards that have enter the battlefield effects, because you're just putting them back in their hand. So those are maybe matchups where you would side them out for something like Supreme Verdict, or I don't know, something else. Another card we got is one singleton copy of Sphinx's Revelation, and this is a new mythic from Return to Ravnica. Basically, it's 2 blue and 1 white and an X. You gain X life and draw X cards. When you are playing ramp, you definitely want to take advantage of X casting cards. But this is a card I'd only want to see once. The mana cost is a little demanding, but this is instant speed, and it can definitely change the game in your favor late. So I like that. The land package is pretty straightforward. 4 ofs of all the duels in the colors, couple forests, couple plains, and then 2 Alchemist Refuge. Alchemist Refuge is a really, really good card for this deck. It lets you play your big threats at instant speed, and that is really good because you can play Angel of Serenity to remove threats, or to remove your own cards in the graveyard and take a unfavorable block, lose Angel of Serenity, and then you get all these bigger creatures back in hand, Thragtusk to stabilize, whatnot. So that's a big play with Alchemist Refuge, and sure, it costs you 10 mana, but we're playing ramp and you're going to get that 10. We also have Amass the Components. We're only playing 2. I think that's the right number, with 3 Ranger's Path, 2 Amass the Components, or maybe 3 Components, 2 Ranger's Path, I don't know. But this is a pretty decent card. It's a pretty powerful draw. I like it. 4 Terminus in my main board because you want to miracle them. You want to see them. You want to see these cards, man. You want to see them. And, chances are, if it's in your starting hand, 4 to 5 turns later, you're still going to be able to hardcast it. So it's a good card. I really like Terminus. It's a strong card. Circumvents a lot of undying or weird mechanics in the game, so definitely a good card to have. And finally, the last card in the main deck is Jace, Architect of Thought, the new Planeswalker, which I didn't think was that good at first, and I actually wanted to play Tamio instead, but I'm finding this card much, much better for what I need to do. At the very least, he's 4 mana to do like a mini Fact or Fiction, and most of the time when you do get him out, you'll be able to use his ability at least twice, and that is pivotal. Looking at 3 cards and getting 1 card is a pretty nice deal. The rest go to the bottom of the library. They're still in the game. I've never used Ultimate, and I rarely use the level 1 just because my board presence is just so strong, but Jace is definitely a good card. I'm sure there's matchups where you'd probably side him out. I don't know. I haven't faced one yet. And speaking of that, we'll take a quick look at the sideboard before we end this video. So we got 3 Detention Sphere, 3 Rest in Peace, 3 Sundering Growth, 2 Rare Revelation, and 4 Supreme Verdict. So Detention Sphere is a new O-Ring in Ravnica, but what this one does is you exile target non-land permanent not named Detention Sphere and all other permanents with the same name. So basically, this beats the shit out of tokens, and which is the reason why I have 3 in here. It also beats the shit out of opposing O-Rings, and it's a nice, it is a good card. It's pretty decent. I mean, it's situational, but it will see play. Rest in Peace is a graveyard killer. 1 white, 1 colorless enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, exile all cards from all graveyards, and if a card or token will be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. This is counterintuitive to what I'm running up here, because the Angel, it wants to grab creatures from the graveyard, my creatures, but then playing this just means you have to change your play style. Like, I would definitely side this in for zombies. I would definitely side this in for green-black. I would side it in against Reanimator, because their game plans revolve much greater around this, or around their graveyards, than yours does. Like, you can play Recursion you can play Angel of Serenity without needing graveyards. You know what I mean? It's not necessary. and you know, when you side them in, you just change your package accordingly. So I think this is a really strong card, especially in the current metagame. Should see play. Sundering Growth is an interesting card. It's basically naturalized. What's nice about it is it's either green or white, 2 mana, either green or white for either. So that makes it pretty easy on your mana base. And the nicest thing about this naturalize is that after you after you destroy the enchantment or artifact, you populate, you know, which is the new mint mechanic where you put a copy of a creature token you control. So this has very good synergy with Armada Wurm and Thragtusk. Okay, Thragtusk beast tokens, right? So also, you know, a lot of people will be playing these new artifact cards, like there's like a candle, or this thing's 3 mana, makes your lands produce any color. You know, there's artifacts out there, and O-rings, and you know, there's things that the utility that this is necessary for. We also got Ray of Revelation here, and all it is destroy target enchantment. I'm not sure if this is the right card. I just put it in to fill space. Probably change this to Nevermore or something. But we got 2 in here. And lastly, we have Supreme Verdict, which is the uncounterable Wrath of God. And it's here to help with super, very, very aggressive aggro matchups that I'm having problems with, because they just act as singular creature removals. This helps against Geist, especially helps against Geist and other like Hexblade decks, which I believe are really strong. One of the best decks I've seen online so far are the decks that there are a lot of good decks, guys. Don't get me wrong, but one of the ones that I think are really powerful are the Exalted decks, or hexproof creature decks. Like they buff up Geist, or they buff up Sigardas, and you know, this card answers those. So you know, I think 4 in the sideboard, you gotta have at least 3 to deal with those. So basically this is that deck, and you know, you can catch my other videos to see how it plays out. And yeah, if you have any questions, post it in the comments below. Thanks.